Too often, when you hear about someone with a criminal record, the story stops there. But in spite of, we go deeper. In this episode, I sit down with Lester Young, formerly incarcerated, once burdened by guilt and loss, but now living a life of redemption and purpose. From the pains of incarceration to the power of education, forgiveness, and community, Lester Young shows us that transformation is possible. This is more than a story about surviving incarceration. It's about what comes after and how you rise in spite of. Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate you being here. Um, yeah, this is amazing. That you said yes to this, because this is extremely important. That us as formerly incarcerated folks, that we begin to have these conversations about what is happening after, right? Again, there's this notion that it's just about the crime that a person committed, they serve their time, and that there's no story about who this person has become, how this person has survived in spite of actually having a criminal record. And so your story and what you have done is truly amazing in the work that you're doing. But before we dive into the work, I just want to touch base on, you know, what was life like before incarceration, right? For you, who was this? Who were you, before incarceration?
I mean, I think I was a typical teenage kid, raised in a two-parent home. Not the best of community. The community wasn't bad. I was raised, I think, in the early late '90s, late '80s. We know the crack epidemic hit the world, and the community that went from playing football in the field to having fun, not thinking about guns, not thinking about drugs. When the crack epidemic hit in the late '80s, man, and we just me and my friends, we started entertaining the idea, being influenced by the music, of course, and then seeing people who are older than us hustling and making money, having nice things, and that we say, hey, we want to be a part of that. So, I come from a decent family. Lost my mother when I was 16 years old. I think that was one of the key things that not forced me, but led me into the street life, is processing that loss in a different way. So
Looking back, um, were there like were there sort of like early warning signs, right? Were there things that you saw, just looking back right now? Yeah, what was some of those things that, had you known what you know now, you would have just done differently?
I think, like I said, when my mother died at 16 years old, maybe 4 or 5 months after my mother transitioned, I started finding myself into the street life. And shortly after that, I got arrested. My first time even getting into the drug game, about 3 weeks into it, I was so green in it. I got busted. So that was my first warning sign. Like, this was not the life. You know what I'm saying? I was facing 25 years at 17 years old. My father, we got an attorney. The attorney was able to get me a youth offender sentence, which was 90 days. So that was a warning sign letting me know that this is it. I ended up getting a 90-day sentence, and unfortunately, that led me to just taking on, believing that my incarceration would add street credibility, not seeing it that this is only the setup. This was the pipeline to me don't end up finding myself deeper into the drug game, and then eventually finding myself in prison for a longer period of time.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that, and I just want to go back. You had mentioned something around the incarceration being street credit,
Yeah,
right? That it was some badge of honor, right? I remember coming up as a young person myself, like, where this was some sort of badge of honor. This was a thing
unfortunately.
to do. And for you as a young person, like, what did that mean? How did you feel? Like, what was the feeling behind saying, okay, yeah, I just went to jail, right? What
Yeah.
was that? What was that
I
thing
mean,
for
you
you?
find your big homies. You find your big homies, people that you look up to. They idolize it. Like, yo, you went to jail. You did not snitch on nobody. You did your time. Me and my homeboys, we were actually preparing to go to jail. That was our rite of passage. Now looking back at it, it was so warped and dysfunctional, and that's what it was. So we glamorized incarceration at a very young age, not realizing the severity and the detriment that incarceration would have on you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. We didn't look at it from that sense. We just looked at it from a very immature way that, hey, I go, I'll be cool when I come out, you know?
Yeah, I think for me, and as I look at even young people today, and again, but just keeping it on myself, it
Mm-hmm.
almost it gave me a sense of belonging,
Mm-hmm.
as a young person, because social capital is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
you want to keep your social capital up. So, um, you said eventually, it led you to receiving a much longer
Yeah.
sentence. And you do speak about this publicly. While this is
Mm-hmm.
not a platform to necessarily talk about a person's time, I think, but what is uniquely powerful about your story is what you done,
Yeah.
right? In the midst of that, and the challenges that you faced, because you received a life sentence without the
Mm-hmm.
possibility of parole at a very young age,
Yeah.
right? um what was your mindset at the moment that like that actually happened? What was your mindset?
Man, bro, like, I mean, taking another human being life, it was a blur. It was a blur for a long time. Like, I couldn't believe that, the lifestyle that I chose the lifestyle, right? And not realizing I chose it in a way of what I call the instant gratification choice. I chose it to receive the glitter, the material possession, without even critically looking at it. Like, how would this drug lifestyle be impactful on me? So all of my choices from 17 and 19 years old was more of an instant gratification. It was about, I just needed to have possession, something to help me be seen. And I found that, when I look at my life now, because I was struggling with so much low self-esteem at 16, 17 to 19, I wanted to be seen. So being seen meant me going and making money, buying the most expensive cars, jewelry, to be seen. That's what it really about. But I didn't look at it from a critical point of view, like, yo, that you carrying a gun, that you're gonna eventually take a person's life, or somebody gonna take your life. And unfortunately, I took someone's life, and in a drug dispute, not realizing the severity and the guilt that will wash over me, that no one told me about after the fact. Like, after the lights are turned off in the courtroom and you're walked in there with the handcuffs, no one told me that the guilt of taking another human being life would submerge over me, right? And it would take over me. You know what I'm saying? To a point where either I'm going to get high inside of the prison, I'm going to become a violent person in prison, or I'm going to attempt to take my life, right? Those are the three things that happens in there, right? So that's when I look at that, man, no one prepared me for that, bro. Like, no one prepared me for that. I just saw it as just one way, making money, getting fast money, nice cars and girls. But when I took that life, man, it really did something to me. It started eating at my soul.
Yeah, man. I think, a lot of times, there's this belief that folks are, pretty much heartless, and that, in those situations, you know, uh, folks don't have a conscience. And
Mhm.
what it essentially you are saying is that like your conscience, your soul, begin to bother you to the point,
Yeah,
and I think we spoke before, where there was this thought of
mhm,
suicide while you were in
absolutely.
prison. Speak about that for me if you can.
Yeah, like, weeks after I got arrested for it, like I said, after the lights was turned off and now the reality's sinking in, saying, hey, man, you just took another human being life. It was not the fact of the time, it was the fact, and how do you rationalize with the fact that you took another man's life over drugs? And now you got to sit in this cell and see this person, hear this person, replay this incident that's happening. So for when I started experiencing that, I said, man, I can't deal with this. I'd rather just take my own life. And so, like I shared with you last time we spoke, is that for the first time, my first couple of days in the county jail, I thought about committing suicide. But it was the man, to show you how God works, is that the same man, a man that I sold crack to months, years before, this man was my cellmate, that he saw when I was taking medication from the nurse. He saw it, and late one night, he hit on the top bunk, and he was like, "Yo, young blood, come down, let me holler at you." And I was like, "Man, what is this crackhead? What is this guy on drugs that I sold drugs going to tell me?" Right? But he peeped it. He saw that I was collecting the pills, and he said, "Man, what you thinking about? I thought about it, and it's not the best way to go." He said, "Man, let me show you something. Let me give you something that may help save your life." And that's when this brother Ali, at the time I met him, he gave me understanding of religion. He helped me to understand, like, hey, wash up for prayer. He was a Muslim, so he showed me how to wash up for prayer, and he opened the Quran, and he told me to read the Al-Fatiha, which is the prayer, and he started reciting in Arabic. I didn't understand what is Arabic, but then he read it in English, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, okay. He said, "I want you to say this prayer every day. When you feel the thoughts of taking your life, say this prayer. When you're struggling with guilt, say this prayer." And that's the thing that began to help me get an understanding. He said the next morning, when the social worker come through, get some money off your books and tell them to go buy your Holy Quran and the autobiography of Malcolm X. He said, read these two books and it will help you give direction. 3 days later, a couple of days later, this brother left my cell and I never saw him again.
Wow, that's amazing. That's truly amazing. You know, we find we find help in some of the strangest places. I think about, again, my
Absolutely.
first time, embracing Islam and hearing the adhan. I had never
Mhm.
heard it before in my life, and I heard a brother calling the adhan, which is the call, the prayer, because a brother next to me, my bunkmate, invited me to go to the mosque in
Mm.
prison. And I never heard the adhan called before in my life, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
heard that, and it just spoke to my soul. And while there were many challenges after embracing Islam, it was something that stood with me uh forever, right? Up
Mhm.
until now, right?
Yeah,
Until
yeah.
eventually becoming Muslim and taking Shahada. But I want to what at what point um so you became Muslim, and you spoke about reading. So I want to jump real quick because we did have a conversation to some degree around just reading, right?
Mhm.
And you have actually books that you've written,
Yeah, yeah.
but strangely enough, you didn't like to read, man.
I hated reading, brother. Like when this brother Ali told me to read the autobiography of Malcolm X and begin to read the Holy Quran, brother, I think I would stay awake for like 10 minutes and I'm falling asleep. It was so boring to me, right? I couldn't understand what I was reading. I was like 19 years old reading at a seventh grade level of education. But I realized Malcolm said something. He said, reading, or one of the quotes, he said, reading awake you from a dormant grave to be mentally alive. I remember reading that and I kept saying it to myself that reading awakens you from a mental state of the dormant state to be mentally alive. And I realized that for years, from my teenage years to my years of incarceration, I was in a dormant state, dead. You know what I'm saying? I was mentally dead, but reading became that water that awakened my spirit. And brother, it created a craving that I started devouring books, and I started saying, hey, now I've read so many books. I want to write my own book, right? But my own books were written as a form of journaling to help me heal from all of the pain, the guilt, and the things that I've been struggling with during my incarceration. Going back again, struggling with the death of my mother, didn't fully process her death, and then dealing with the death of another human being that died in the way that he died over something as simple as crack cocaine. So I had to process all those things. So all my books today is about how to help individuals heal from their past pain.
The Black on Black cap is back. Only 50 pieces available. Shop now at focusbrand.com.
what was some of the other traumas that you may have had to overcome, and what was that process like? What did you actually do? Because I'm thinking about the person watching this who are, who may be also haunted with this thought of the things that they have done, the things
Mhm.
that they have gone through, right? And just looking for some sort of steps or how to, right, to navigate these things, because they're painful, right? They're
Yeah.
extremely painful. And so if you can share what are some of the things that you did?
I to help me, my journey of healing started about 3 years into my incarceration, right? Like I experimented with the things in prison, just the normal mundane stuff in prison. I experimented with, but again, I was blessed. I remember I saw one of my big homies, and I walked up to him one day on the yard. I was like, "Yo, what's up, big homie?" I was like, "Hey, man, I surpass you." Like you know, on the block, you want to be like, see your big homie, like, "Yo, I did the thing, right?" And I was like, "Yo, I bought you a car, blah blah blah," and he was like, "Yo, that's good." He said, what's up? What's next?" And I was like, this dude done changed on me. But at this time, he was already in for a minute. And he said, "Man, where your mind at?" He said, "Man, you got a life sentence. What are you going to do with your time?" He said, "You're going to be like the dudes back here that is going to die in prison with a life sentence, or you're going to fight to be mentally alive in prison." This is from a dude that I knew so dope and hustled. But what he showed me, he said, "Man, I want you to start reading. Go back again to Ali, who introduced me to Malcolm X and the autobiography of Malcolm X and the Holy Quran." Ran across another big homie. This time, this is somebody that I looked up to in the dope game. He became my mentor. He became the brother that said, "Hey, don't be like that. You got a life sentence. You can either die in prison or you can fight to be alive in prison. Either going to do your time or time is going to do you." He said, "I want you to start reading books, man." And so he started getting me books, and that's when the book came with the James Allen books, "As a Man Thinketh, So Is He," the Napoleon Hill, Thinking to Grow Rich, the Dennis Kimball books. I started reading these books, and my mind started shifting. And when my mind started shifting, it started pushing me towards journaling, because in prison I wasn't able to come out and tell people how I felt internally from the death of another human, causing the death of a human being, and then processing the guilt and the harm that I caused his family. This man had children, right? And how do I process that? How do I look these people in the face one day and tell them that I'm sorry for taking their husband or their father's life? So I had to process. So journaling became my escape. I started journaling, and from journaling, that's when I started building what I call the steps of the 5 stage of incarceration framework, meaning that I had to work out of my areas of self-denial, had to move from angry, because I was so angry. It's like I was angry at the wrong people. I should have, I was angry and I was venting on everybody, but I realized that my anger was to my pain. I was hurting so bad that I needed to figure it out. So by me not having the tools, I wanted to fight everybody in prison. But then again, one of my Muslim chaplains told me, he said, "Lester, you mad at the wrong people." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You need to be mad at the man in the mirror." And when I looked at, he said, "Look at that man in the mirror every morning. That's the man you need to be mad with. That's the man you need to reconcile with." And I started looking myself in the mirror every morning, and I began to see the broken man that I was that broken teenager that I was hiding from. And that's when I began that healing process. I said, I need to heal the 16-year-old Lester who lost his mother. I need to heal the 19-year-old Lester who took another man's life. Here it is, I'm 25, 26 years old in prison. I had to begin healing, and that healing started through journaling, through prayer, through staying away from the things that would bring about shame upon me. You know what I'm saying? And shame upon, I always said this, was like, I said, I never want that man, family member, the guy that unfortunately unalive, his family member to look me up one day and say, "Hey, I want to go visit this man." And the wardens or the prison director said, "He's on lockup because he's been fighting since he got here." I said, "I want them to, when they ever come, if that day would ever come, I want them to see that this man has changed his life, and this man is ready to have the conversation about what happened, and how he's seeking forgiveness from the person he harmed."
Brother, listen, man, you don't know how powerful that is, of what you just said, you know, um, to just express that level of remorse for the family, and
Yeah,
to begin to consider that man's children and his
yeah,
mom. and his whole family to be
We don't
thinking
think like
about
that,
that,
bro.
to heal and to change your life because you're thinking about the possibility of
Mhm,
that family actually coming to see you, and
mhm.
you want to make sure that you're demonstrating that you have changed your life.
I would have dishonored. It's like if I would have went into prison and still lived the way I was living in the street, I saw it as dishonoring this man's death and his family.
Wow.
Like I, I could not bring his life back, right? But I needed to find a way, and I share this with you, brother. I remember it was on a Friday night. I'm sitting in this prison cell watching a show called Dateline and hearing a mother cry from the loss of her son, who died very similar to my situation. I remember after that, watching that show, I tried to go to sleep, brother. I couldn't go to sleep. I woke up and Allah woke me up and said, "No, you need to get up and pray." I got up and prayed that night. And when I started praying, I was like, "Oh, Allah, forgive me, Allah, forgive me." And I felt like Allah was like, "I've forgiven you, right? You have repented to me. You have to seek the forgiveness of the person you harm." And I was like, "How do I seek forgiveness in the person that I harm? He's no longer physically here." And it was like, you need to call his name, mention his name, and apologize to his spirit in that room. Brother, I laid on that cold that cell floor and I cried for the first time in years. I cried because I was like, "Oh Allah, forgive me." And Allah was like, "I've forgiven you. Seek forgiveness of the person you harm." And for 5 years in my incarceration, I never wanted to mention this man's name because I wanted to detach myself from that. But
Wow.
in this period, that moment, for the first time, I summoned this man's spirit into my room, man, and I called his name out and I begged him for forgiveness. And I said, "I'm going to do everything within my power to honor your life for the rest of my life by me living the right way." And that was, again, was a turning point for me. My victim, the remorse that I had and understanding the severity of the harm that I've caused was the motivation for me to change my life. Because again, I don't want to dishonor this man's life by being the person that still sell drugs and carrying a gun, brother. I wanted to honor his life by living my life. That's why I started my program called Path to Redemption, because I was searching for redemption after taking the life of another human being.
And so I want to go there. I want to go back really quick. Just brother, you don't listen. This is so powerful, man. You've said so many things, man, that is much needed, man. Is much needed, and I'm very happy that you have done that work, that you have done the
Mhm,
things necessary to heal, and just to think about, I think about myself and the things that I needed to forgive, right? While I was
mhm,
very angry, the same thing, this angry kid, man, lashing out at the world and just needing to actually heal
mhm,
from this young person who was, dealt with trauma coming up as a
mhm,
kid and addiction and
mhm,
abuse and those things. So I definitely understand, man, that healing in that process and going into those things is super essential in order for us to actually move forward.
mhm,
I knew uh when I went in prison that I knew that I needed to heal and build a relationship with my father. I
mhm,
knew that I needed to forgive my mother and build a
mhm,
relationship with her. And I knew that if those things were not addressed, that I would probably continue to live my life the way
mhm,
that I was living it. And
mhm,
so um, I want to just sort of jump into, you mentioned redemption.
mhm.
Um, what is redemption? What is that?
Redemption for me is atoning for the mistakes in which I've done and living my life according to a moral compass that is completely different. My moral compass today is different than it was when I was 19 years old. Seeking repentance and atonement for my actions is what redemptions mean to me. That it means a renewal of my mind, my spirit, my life, my purpose, my gift, using it now, finding it and discovering it.
You wrote a book.
Mhm,
You wrote several books around
mhm,
redemption, right? And
mhm,
sort of this guide, these guides around redemption for young people and for
mhm,
yourself and whoever is
mhm,
looking to be redeemed. Um So you started writing curriculum
Mhm.
and all of these things. I just want to just go back really quickly around the education component,
Mhm.
right? So when you think about education, um, from all levels, right? What was the biggest role of education? What role did that play in your healing?
I would say education became, Malcolm said this as well. He said education is a passport to freedom, right? When I started reading and I started falling in love with reading, reading became my passport in my prison cell. Reading opened up the window, which is my mind, and allowed me to begin to imagine what life could be outside of this prison wall. Right. So it's like every day I turned a page inside of a book from a book, my mind traveled outside of those prison bars. I no longer saw myself as inmate 187018. I saw myself every day in a page of a book as a free man who one day will be out there to live out his dreams. That's what education did for me. Education gave me a different GPS. It gave me a roadmap to building a life after incarceration. Think about it. Like I said, when I went into prison, I was reading a seventh grade level education, high school dropout. I had street knowledge, but when it comes down to other things, when it came down to imagining the world, bro, I spin the block that I circled every day in the same block, wasting gas, walking with brand new clothes, and the same block. I never left the city, right? Because I was afraid. And now through education, I started knowing, brother, there's a world existed outside of my block. And that book told me that it existed. So in prison, I would sit, like you see in the back of me, this sunset. This meant something to me because in prison, I would sit on a beach every day and meditate and pray on a beach, right? That's what allowed me to escape that prison cell. So reading and education gave me a passport to my freedom. It let me know that life is way bigger than my block. Life was way bigger than my prison cell. Life was way bigger than my inmate number. Life was way bigger than that brown prison uniform I was wearing for 22 years. Life is way bigger than that. And the opportunity will come for me to live it. And once I get a chance to live it, bro, I'm going to live it to the fullest. So I've been blessed to walk out of there now and living it to the fullest by the grace of God.
When you founded Path to Redemption, um, was that something that was developed while you were while you were
Mhm,
incarcerated, or was
mhm.
this something that you created when you came home from prison?
It was something I started way before I came out of prison,
Mm,
18 years before I walked out of prison. Because again, I realized that I was searching for my redemption. And the beauty, remember going back into that story I told you on that Friday night when I finally made amends and atoned for taking this man's life. Days later, I started creating my own community, meaning that I started grabbing my homeboys who were still in that lifestyle. I was pulling them in and saying, "Hey, man, we got to find our redemption in prison." So my first class was my homeboys. My first class was my brothers that I started building with and start showing them, "Hey, man, check this book out." I remember every week, man, we would find a certain part of the prison yard and we'd do our own spelling bee. We would do our own spelling bee inside of a prison yard because we wanted better for ourselves. So Path of Redemption was founded inside of the prison walls that I now brought out of prison with me and I'm using right. I live it. That's my motto today. That's who we are. That's what we stand on, the path to redemption. We all searching for that path for our own individual redemption.
so this show is it's about just having a criminal record and
Mhm,
moving forward in spite of, and that you have done. But I'm also thinking about the person who is watching this and listening, and like there's one thing to be who you are in prison, but then
mhm,
there's another when you
mhm,
return home. And
mhm,
again, while you have been an example of what that actually looks like,
mhm.
what are some of the things, maybe challenges that you had, outside of just, okay, you have this criminal record, but what's some of the challenges or the things that you had to overcome while you were when once you returned home?
Well, one of the biggest challenges I struggle with, we all know the most important one is employment. That's the one. But I would say for me was just the emotional acclimation, the mental acclimation back into my family circle and being around people. I struggled with connectivity. I struggled with being around people for long periods of time. Think about it, in prison, you only talk for 15 minutes on a phone call. You might get lucky to get a 30-minute phone call. So I was used to communicating with family and friends in short pockets. We come on visit, we may speak for an hour, 2 hours, and they're gone. I may not see them for 6 months, right? So I struggled with that social acclimation back into the family unit, how to communicate with people that weren't in prison. Like my social skills, I was off. I was really off for months after prison. I even, brother, like, I remember I took this picture of myself. This lady, I was doing a job interview. She said, "Could you send me a picture of you to let me see what you look like before you come into my office building?" Right. So I have the picture the security officer would know. I didn't realize how hard, how often, we did not smile in prison. I sent this lady a prison mugshot. I'm like, no smiling. And this lady, I just told her that I got out of prison for murder. She sent me a message back and said, "Lester, don't you ever send a picture like that to me ever again or anyone else." And I'm thinking it's a normal picture. But she said that picture looks like a jail mug and it's definitely not a good look for you. She said, "You
Wow.
need to learn how to smile." So when you ask what was my challenge, brother, my challenge was that social skill, how to smile, how to have fun, how to be okay with being comfortable around people. That was a lesson for me. And I look back at a lot of my pictures when I got out of prison. I'm pretty sure if you or some of the people who've been in prison listen to this, we didn't show any pictures of smiling. It was
Right.
always a jail mug. So now when I take a picture, I'm like, I'm,
Right.
I'm smiling because I had to learn that. So I would say my biggest challenge, my brother, was the social acclimation back into the world, and that culture shock that comes with coming back into the world after 22 years when the world had changed from 1992 to 2014.
Yes, brother. That is a bar, because that is a thing that many of us struggle with coming home from prison, especially a lot of brothers who have done a long stretch of time.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things, because now, like, you speak on stages,
Yeah,
you a public speaker, like you teach, all of those things,
yeah.
man. Like, what what uncomfortable thing did you do in
Mm,
order to overcome that thing?
mm,
Because I think about, a lot of times, the thing that we need to do to overcome the obstacle is the most uncomfortable thing in the world,
mm.
right? And so what was that uncomfortable thing that you had to do in order for you to get where you are now?
Well, it's a couple. One was receiving critique, feedback, and helping me identify what my blind spots were. Like you mentioned, I'm a speaker. I remember when I first got out of prison, I did a presentation. It was an audience full of men and women. And I was fresh out of prison and I'm speaking like I was speaking to a group of men in prison. And this sister came up to me. She said, "Brother Lester, let me tell you something. Very powerful message." But she said, "If you want to go further in this business as a speaker and a trainer, you have to learn how to speak, not as you're speaking in prison, but you have to learn how to speak to a diverse audience of people who are women and they don't like the yelling and the rah, rah, rah. You have to learn that." That was a blind spot. That was one of my first discomfort, is leaning into that, receiving that feedback. And the second one was building relationships with, and I say this, building relationships with men who never been in prison and accepting their authentic love and support. What does that mean? It was hard for me to accept love and support from another brother who didn't walk the lifestyle that I live. It was hard for me to accept feedback and love from brothers, like real men, like to be in the presence of real men that don't want nothing but just want to see you do good. It was hard for me to accept that because my mind, my paradigm, even though I had this education, I was still operating from a criminal mindset almost, right? So
Absolutely.
me understanding that part of it, say, brother, I'm I'm open to it. And I know that it was hard, bro. It was hard for me but I leaned into it and I built some strong relationship with real men who genuinely are men of men that love me for who I am. And when they use the word, say, brother, I love you, it's not, it's an affirmation that I see you and I respect you. Something I wasn't really familiar with. So those will be the two things that will come to my mind right now.
Yeah, brother, those were the things, man. I think for me, as well, I I had to understand. I had to change my mindset around
Mm-hmm.
what I perceived and thought to be corny.
Mm-hmm.
I think for
Exactly.
me, the lens for me was, you know, oh, this person's corny or this
Mm-hmm.
person's a lame, or because they
Mm-hmm.
again they haven't experienced the
Yeah.
lifestyle that I have experienced. So for
Yeah.
me, it was this thing of being corny until I realized, listen, the corny people are free.
Mm-hmm.
The corny people are staying out of prison. The corny people are thriving,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I'm with the corny people,
Yeah.
right? I knew that I needed to change my circle. I
Mm-hmm.
needed to embrace new friends.
Yeah.
And not that I dismissed or disconnected myself to some degree with old friends, they're still my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew if I wanted to live a life of freedom, if I wanted to live a life of, being home with my children,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I needed to embrace a mindset of people that uh, was on that path, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
I'm proud.
so that's beautiful. Um, also, quick, if you weren't doing this work, what would you be doing
What?
if you wasn't doing this work? What would you be doing? That's a bonus question.
Bruh.
Yeah,
Like if I would, this is my life. I would be dead. I would be dead, brother. This is the gift. The God, Allah has given me a gift and a purpose that I have to walk out. Like this is not for money. This is not for likes. This is who I am. So if I walk away from this today, brother, I believe I would die in the streets. That's how I believe. And like right now, everything I'm doing, no matter the challenges I face, bro, I gotta keep walking this out. This is a promise I made to my victim, brother. This is personal work. This is personal. This is the promise I made to God that I'm going to get out and do the right thing. So I don't have no fallback plan. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. No, 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 no. I know what that is. I made a commitment. I made a commitment upon walking out of prison, or before I walked out of prison, that I
Mhm.
was going to commit my life to the service of young people, man.
Yeah, bro.
You
Like
know,
working, like doing this work. I've don't get me wrong. I've tried. I've done before I came home from prison. I'm washing dishes. I was a dishwasher making $7.25. Working brothers exploiting me because I had a felony conviction. I'm working with brothers selling tires, and they pay me $50 a day, so I'm getting paid less than minimum wage. Working in a plant, in a cold plant where it's so cold I got to wear these jumpsuits to be able to be comfortable, freezing cold in this meat factory. So I'm not afraid of work. But even when I was doing this work, I knew that was not me. And the people who were around me said, bro, this ain't you. But it was only me using these stepping stones to get where I need to be. So I'm not afraid of work. So when people hear this, don't think that those dudes afraid of work. No, I grind. But this right here, what I do is my life. Like I would die,
yo,
like for real. So I'm not afraid of work, man. I'm just passionate about this, man. I'm real about it. It's not a dollar amount that can stop me from doing what God and my promise that I made to my God and to my victim, to my family, and to my own self, that I will walk this path to redemption until I die.
that's beautiful. Man, that's beautiful. I think I have one more question. Um, if there was a movie about your life, who's playing you?
Who be playing me in a movie? Oh, that's a good question, brother. You hit me with that one. I don't really know. I don't know who would play me right now. You know what I'm saying? That's one I gotta think about, brother. You know what I'm saying? I'm lost for words on that one. Like who would play me? Like,
Yeah, that
yo,
was the bonus. That was
yeah,
the
that's a
bonus
bonus
question,
question.
man.
I would say this though, whoever played me, man, they definitely got to be a genuine person.
Yep.
And that's something to look at because some people ask me like, hey, have you ever thought about a documentary? Have you ever thought about writing an autobiography outside of self-help books. I feel like when I transition, those things will happen because I think I would have enough body of work that someone could be able to build. Right now, I'm still living my life and walking in purpose and building this. That an autobiography or documentary may be something people may make years later. And I use this the reason why I say this because one of my mentors asked me a question one day. He said, "What do you want to be successful? Or you want to be significant?" And I said, "I want to be successful." He said, "Why?" He said, "Don't you know success is only a temporary thing? Significance, meaning you live for the next 100 years." Right? So he said that when you're thinking about the work that you do, think about creating this a significant impact in the world that your name will be mentioned 20, 30 years after you die. Think about a successful person when they die, they only leave that success here and they're not mentioned. Malcolm been dead over 90 something years and he's still being talked about. One of the most read books in the prisons to this very day is that book, his life, his journey. He's impacting the world for, and as long as he's been out of this earth, he's impacting more people while he's been dead. That's significance. Martin Luther King. That's, you think about that, brother. Like Malcolm only lived a short life,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's been dead over 90, I forgot, like 95, 97 years, right? But thank to this, we talking about Malcolm X in 2025.
Yeah,
That's
that's right.
significance. That's relevant. Right? That's
Absolutely.
powerful. So for me or for you, the work that we're doing, I pray, inshallah, that we will be mentioned 100 years from now about the impact that we're making in the young people's lives, our story. So when we think about a movie, I don't know who will make that movie. Right now, I'm only focused on impact and adding value, and I want to be significant. That when I do leave this earth, inshallah, that my good deeds will continue to be a blessing for me way after my physical earth, living on this physical earth.
I mean,
I mean,
yeah, listen, man, brother, I really appreciate you doing this. Your work
alhamdulillah,
is necessary. You are necessary. And this is a part of your legacy. This is your legacy here.
alhamdulillah.
Just having this conversation and it coming from your mouth, right?
Mhm.
You saying it.
Yeah,
This is a part of your legacy, and I believe that you will be talked about 70
inshallah.
years, 90 years from now,
You
and
know,
the
it's
work
the
that you're doing.
zakat jariyah, brother. It would be a blessing. We do good in this life,
Hmm.
and it will continue to bless us in the next life, brother. Like we gotta be thinking about every good deed that we do, we share this podcast.
Yep.
Every good deed that comes from this will
Is
be
a
a blessing
benefit.
for us in the next life.
I
You know what I
mean,
mean? So that's what I
absolutely.
look for. That's being significant. You know, so alhamdulillah, I thank you for this opportunity. I hope that your audience will get a chance to really feel the energy from the both of us and be
Yes.
able to understand that we're adding value that will be something that will carry on because this recording here today will be in existence that will continue to carry on through life. You know, so I appreciate you, my brother, for allowing me to add to my good deeds.
Nah, no problem, Habib. Yeah, thank you so much again. Where could folks find you? How could
Mhm.
they support uh the work that you're doing? Please let us know.
I would say, definitely reach out to me at path and number two redemption.org. That's where you can find me on all social media platforms. You'll find the books that I've written. You'll learn about more of the body of work that I'm doing. And you can support me that way. You can just follow me on my social media platforms. On Instagram is that path and number two redemption 515. On LinkedIn, Lester Young, and then Facebook, Lester Young.
Again, thank you so much, brother. You
Alhamdulillah.
don't know what this done. You're the first. You're my first guest. You're my first recording, right?
Alhamdulillah.
Um, and so yeah, thank you so much, man. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to what this will be. I'm looking forward to us doing this again, face to
Yeah.
face. And again, thank you so much. I
I
appreciate you.
appreciate you. I remember when I saw this posted on Instagram, I was like, brother, I met you. We met like in 2018, 19, and we have
Yes,
not had a chance. This is our first time really chatting since that time. So, man, I appreciate you for allowing me, brother. And may every good deed that you put forth on this podcast may it continue to be fruitful and continue to bless your audience. And may you continue to do what you do. And I look forward to, we're gonna get together in person soon, brother. I just feel the energy. I feel that we're gonna connect again in person, and I look forward to that, brother. So again,
no.
thank you for this opportunity.
Lester Young's journey is a reminder that people with a criminal record are more than their past. They can create legacies of impact and purpose in spite of prison, in spite of stigma. In spite of it all, change is possible. And Lester Young is living proof. I'm Zaki Smith. See you on the next episode of In Spite Of.